the bear thing here, you know, with the positive and the negative.
And we're live, guys. For those who are just joining us, we were just debating whether we were wearing the uniform tonight. In the fact that both Mark and I are in black tops, and Dan clearly didn't get the memo. But hey, here we are. Another staying human under pressure. It's headed up on my notes as SHUP. So I had to say that and then thought no one's going to know what we're talking about. But here we are. Hey, it's been another day, I guess. We've all come from different places. Probably mid-flow, if you're anything like me, mid-flow of several different work streams in and around me. But I guess, you know, this session or this conversation is really, it's not about fixing, it's not really a how-to guide. It primarily is a space to actually really notice, have a conversation, explore, understand, you know, and I think if we kind of go through the sort of journey that we've evolved from since the beginning of the year, where, you know, back in January, we were kind of talking about, you know, you're just so in it and you can't really see where you're at, and how far you've come or how far you maybe feel like you haven't come. And then kind of moved into this idea that, you know, you are still standing, but you're not quite sure whether you're actually feeling grounded. And then there is this realization that actually you've slightly drifted. And I suppose this evening is a continuation of that. And it's like, you know, we've all talked before about how quickly we are stepping into the space to fill rather than actually just go notice. So, hey, we're just going to notice the space this evening. I'm going to throw it to you guys because, Dan, I know you wrote something at the weekend about this, didn't you? I think it was, I don't get any posts in sequence anymore, so I'm never entirely sure the order of which I received it. But a recent post of yours.
Yeah, and you know, it's so easy to happen, this drift, when we don't ever take the time or set aside the time or be deliberate about creating some time to turn our attention inwards, to ask ourselves some questions. What am I doing? Do I really want to do this? Is this really how I want to live? And most importantly, is this really how I want to feel? Because that's the clue, how you feel, right? I spent years burying, repressing, escaping, avoiding, shutting out my feelings. I never thought they were any use to me. I didn't want them. They slowed me down. They caused me to be upset. So I often told myself I shouldn't be feeling like this. Crack on, right? Also, I am the man that sees the nails everywhere. I'm the hammer that sees the nails everywhere. I always want to fix things. So if I notice a problem, I don't like this, or I'm not sure this is how I want it to feel, I want to fix it right there and then. Okay, what can we do? Let's make some change. Let's try and outrun it. Let's try and change it. Let's control it. And this is where we make the mistake, right? Because how are we going to know how we got there in the first place? How are we going to know where we have drifted from and to? And how do we know what the course is we'd rather be on? We don't take that time to stop and to contemplate, maybe to talk to somebody else, to turn our attention inward, to spend that bit of time with ourselves and sit with it, right? As you said right at the start, Laura. How are we going to know what we're working from, what we're working towards, where that anchor is that you also often talk about, Laura? What is our grounded state? Who are we in that grounded state? If we don't know that, then how do we know we've drifted? Yeah. So this is the thing in a modern world. It's so crash, bang, wallop, move on to the next thing, bombarded with information, 24-hour news cycles. It's all on. We never just take that time. And I know you talk about this a lot, Laura, to pause, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. How do I feel? How do I feel about what's happening right now? How do I feel about where my life's going? How do I feel about where my life's at? How do I feel about how I got here? When you start asking yourself those questions, the answers are very revealing. You start to understand, right, okay, so this is what I really care about. This is what I really would like to be giving my attention to. This is the direction in which I'd really like my life to be moving. And it's not. And then it's that awareness, isn't it, Laura? It's awareness precedes change. But this is the bit we forget. And we forget to sit in it for a bit. We go, oh, God, this has happened. React. Oh, I don't like this. React. Instead of just, now, why do I feel that way? Why am I reacting like that? Where's that pattern come from? Does this serve me? Do I really like how it makes me feel? Do I like how it makes the people around me feel? We never stop and we never ask those questions. So we repeat the same patterns again and again and again and again. And this is how we drift, right? Because we started out and we had an idea of where we were going. And then over time, little bits, just little tiny bits take us off course, like the airplane. And all of a sudden we notice we drifted. Now we can immediately try and course correct, or we can just say, hang on. Now, was that even the course I wanted to be on in the first place? Why do I feel like I drifted? What am I drifted from? Where would I rather be going? You've got to ask yourself all these questions. And that's the thing we don't do, Laura. We don't take that time.
And I guess I'm going to throw the thing to Mark too, because I think you're right, Dan. You know, we don't take the time. I think, you know, because we're constantly under this illusion that we don't have enough of it. But I think that there's part of it that actually, you know, it's not about literally stopping sometimes. I don't know, Mark, you know, there's lots of things that I could say in response to that, but I'm going to bring you in on the conversation. You know, where space, no, not the final frontier. We don't like it.
I started with a new client last night, Laura, and we started the call and she spoke for about 12 minutes, just spoke and just told me this and that and this and this story and all of this tapestry of story. And when she got to the end of it, I asked her, when was the last time you took a breath? She's like, oh, I know I was talking a lot there. I said, no, that's not what I mean. When was the last time you took a breath? She's like, I don't know. To Dan's point there about how busy we are, so it's just that constant. So I can't take a breath, because if I take a breath, what plate's going to stop spinning? I think the spinning plates analogy, I think you have to be at least over 35 to understand that, because it's not on Saturday evening TV anymore. You know, it stopped being on sometime in the 90s. But if we can't take a breath, you know, we can't even get to the point where we're going to adjust, get to the point. And I suppose space is scary, because we're so used to being 90 miles an hour all the time that to slow down, like if I slow down, what am I missing? What am I not doing? Where am I not having an advantage? What am I not getting on top of? What's getting on top of me if I slow down? And it's nearly like, you know, we feel like we're making progress, but maybe we're simply bailing water out of a boat that has a hole in it, you know, and this is never going to end until we plug the hole. And that's the thing, we don't stop and go, why is the water still in the boat? I've been bailing water forever. Why is the water still in the boat? What do I do? To even go on that drifting analogy, and the drifting is brilliant as an analogy, Dan. I love it because it's so accurate, because we are untethered to something, and we have no control, we've no paddle, we've no sail. It's just whatever the tide is going, we're going that direction. And off we go in that direction. And that course correct thing is so interesting too, because if that 1 degree off course, it's fine tomorrow, fine the next day, it's fine in a week, it's fine in a month. But in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, that degree has really spun us out into all sorts of directions. And I do wonder, because I know I get like that. I know I'm like, God, I have this to do, and 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 this to do, you know? And I nearly have to be very disciplined with myself, going, you know what? You actually need to not do for a little while. You need to slow down. And then I have to stop myself and go, that's not good enough. What am I going to do? Not what do we need to do? Yeah. Because we all know we need to. We know, you'd have all heard this in the coaching space where somebody says, I just need to. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means when you tell me you just need to do something. Well, what does that mean? And so it's about, what am I going to do? But to do that, we have to vote for ourselves, and we have to take a vote of ourselves in another direction. And I don't know, guys, what you think. is it because of all this mayhem, because of all this business, we're not quite whole anymore? You know, and is that it? Like when we say we're noticing something's not right, are we noticing that we're missing part of ourselves? Is that what we're really becoming aware of? There's a part of me not here. There's a part of me missing. You know, what part is that? Is that the part of me that has joy? Is the part of me that's comfortable in the world? Is that the part of me that I don't have time for? What part of me is missing? Because is that really what the awareness is? And then just from my experience of working with different people, it kind of comes to that eventually. It's like, well, I don't know who, look, this is me, I am Mark, and I do this. But I don't really know who I am.
I think that's such an important point, Mark. And there's a couple of things that kind of are playing in my mind to that. And I think there's one that continues this drifting analogy. And I think it's not just the drifting of ourselves, but it's also the fact that we end up tethering ourselves almost to the boats of other people. And so we don't actually realize how much we've become actually pulled like this because actually we're not anchored within ourselves. We are effectively anchored to the boat that is family, the boat that is work, the boat, and all of those things are pulling us in all sorts of directions. So it's not just the natural drift that we could have because we've just got caught up in the noise. It is those things that we've actively tethered ourselves to and haven't realized how much they have influenced exactly what we're all about. And going back to your point about, you know, this question of who am I, you know, if we stripped away all of this sort of tethering to all of these other boats and go, who am I left at the end of this? I actually think there are some people who go, well, actually, frankly, without those things, what am I? Who am I? Because so much of the person's identity is associated with all the things that we've tethered ourselves to. But whether they are actually giving us, you know, the joy that you talk about, the contentment, I talk about wanting to feel alive, you know, and there is a clue for all those naysayers who tell me that it shouldn't be called Project Me. There is a very clear reason why it's called Project Me, is because actually in a world that we find ourselves in today, it is too easy to find that we have forgotten ourselves in the whole mix. And sometimes we have to, I call it remembering. I don't return to myself, but I do have to remind myself who I am in amongst the noise and what I need for me. I don't have an issue with the quietness anymore. And you know, I had somebody come and do some decorating recently. He said, oh, how do you cope with the quietness in here? I said, it's beautiful, I love it. But I couldn't have, 10 years ago, I probably couldn't have done it because I was so used to operating at a vibe where there was constant activity around me. But the challenge with constant activity, to your point, Dan, is that you end up reacting rather than responding because you constantly need your. So it's I sort of say, unless you talk about awareness, I talk about acknowledgement. Unless we acknowledge or become aware, we end up solving the wrong bloody problem. You know, so, and unfortunately, when you're constantly active, then you're never going to sit and actually really be aware or really truly acknowledge where you are right now to truly know the problem you're actually fixing, you know, if it is a problem to be fixed at all. So we go somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for, you know, not consciously stepping forward because we're not really taking a moment's breath to truly evaluate the moment. And that's how it's just too easy to forget who we are, because we're just assuming so much just to get through the day.
Yeah, we stop choosing our response, don't we, Laura? That's what happens. When we get into reactive mode, that all reactive mode is our brain going back to old wiring, going, I know this, we've seen this before, this is what we do for reaction. Generally is fear-based, generally has been put in place to try and keep us safe. and it doesn't do that. It keeps us from seeing what's really happening, what's really around us. And I think so. There are two things you're talking about tethering to, and you mentioned tethering to other people. There are two things that I've found in my work and in my own life that people tether themselves to, which really cause the drift. One is their job. We've all done that. I used to be Dan Glyde, BBC Sport. That's who I was. That's how I introduced myself at dinner parties. And boy, was it a great talking point. I've worked with Ian Wright, I've worked with Alan Shearer, The reaction I'd get in the room, amazing. So when I left the BBC and BBC Sport, I suddenly thought to myself, who the hell am I then? If I'm not Dan Glyde, BBC Sport, who am I? I didn't know, Laura. I had no idea. I'd become my career. Now, the other thing that we all tether ourselves, well, some of us tether ourselves to, or we all have probably at one time or another, is ideology. This is a big problem. This causes us to drift big time, because ideology is a set of rules, set of ideas come up by somebody else, no smarter than you, who had a specific agenda and wanted to achieve something with the human race. And through our religions, through our education, through our politics, we end up tethering ourselves to ideology, and we drift into all these territories we never ever wanted to be in. We never chose. We never did it intentionally or deliberately. We take on the views of the ideology without question. We don't choose them. We don't sit with them. We don't ask ourselves, how do we feel about this? We don't empathize. We're not compassionate. We react and we bring the ideology into play. And those two things are two things I see happening again and again and again and again. People living by a set of rules they never chose deliberately. And when you do that, again, it's that degrees, isn't it? It takes you further and further away from who you genuinely are. And if you do what I did and you escape and avoid how you feel and you bury and you repress it, how on earth are you going to know? What's going to be the sign, the signal? Like what's going to make you have a pause and think? It's going to be how you feel. And it generally, for most of us, it's some sort of void, right? It's some sort of gap. And what I used to do was fill that with lots of very unhealthy things, which made me drift even further away from who I was. And there I was being taken around by ideas somebody else had come up with, living my life by a set of rules somebody else had come up with, my identity very much being my job. I had no idea who I was amongst that. I wasn't choosing responses. I wasn't defining and declaring who I was in relation to what was happening to me in every moment. I was reacting. I was barely conscious with it all. I couldn't be. I was too stuck up in my own head. And this is how we drift, because we forget that how we feel matters. We forget that we can plough our own furrow. We forget it's okay to live by our own rules, our own measures of success, that we don't need to be tethered to other people, to ideas, to jobs, to things. We need to be. We are human beings. We're not human doings, thinkings, havings. We're not our jobs. We're not our roles. We're not the car we drive. We're not the watch we wear, the suit we wear, the shoes we wear, the places we go on holiday. None of those things is who we are. That's what we do. Who we are is what we value, and what we value in terms of how things make us feel. We're all chasing ways of feeling, Laura. That's what the game is. We're all growing and evolving on a journey of following our feelings. So if we don't ever stop to ask ourselves how we feel, if we don't ever stop to think about, why am I over here? Why am I reacting like that? Why is my relationship with this person like this? We're never ever going to know. And if we never look in the mirror and ask ourselves, well, what do we really care about? And why do we really care about it? And then focus our attention on that, we'll constantly be drifted or tethered to somebody else, or at the mercy of, other people's rules and ideas. And, it's almost at epidemic levels, that in our culture.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think we almost somewhat blindly ignore the space that actually could present us with different options. I don't know, Mark, I guess, what happens when we notice the space? What changes?
I have a half-written post about this for a long time, and I can't find the words to put it properly. Maybe it's better in verbally than written. But we become disillusioned, and that's a good thing. because we spend our time illusioned. That's what's happening to us. We're illusioned what's going on. So suddenly we become disillusioned. And while disillusioned is in our mind going, this is not good, but it is good. Because if we've broken down the illusion of what we have been living, oh, I'm disillusioned. Because that's a place to build from. You can't build it, to Dan's point about ideology. You can't build from illusion. You know, this is what I've created. Well, I have to, from exercise, I can't build out of it. So when we do notice, we become disillusioned. But the unfortunate reality of being disillusioned is the emotional reaction to that can be and feel quite negative, because like, where am I? What do I do? What am I supposed to do? So it's easy to reach for the distractions. It's easy to reach for the alcohol or the drugs or the gambling or whatever else is an easy solution, because this disillusion is hard to deal with. Because the disillusion means we have to take some action. It means we have to change. It means we have to do something different. And as we know, we're human. And like, if you never changed anything ever, that would be just perfect. Thank you very much for never changing anything for my entire life. But it hasn't happened, and it can't happen. So it means we have to deal with the hard then, because we've got to that point. But I think the challenge is at that point of being disillusioned or discovering we're a bit disillusioned with the world and with what we've created of the world, is the need for some compassion. Because if we don't bring that in and build that in, then we begin to fight with ourselves, and we can hold ourselves to account, but instead of holding ourselves to account, we start criticizing ourselves, and we start going down the wrong direction with ourselves, as opposed to if we bring in that bit of compassion, then we can go, hey, it's okay, like, you know, it's all right, this is where we are, let's move on from this space. And when we bring that compassion, growth and change becomes so much easier, because we allow it in ourselves.
And I think, you know, you using the word compassion, I suppose this is the same as, like, you know, we mustn't judge ourselves for the fact that we've ended up where we might have ended up. You know, that's, I think, you know, it's arguably the same thing. I think we are so tough on ourselves when we sit there going, oh, I should have done this. I should, you know, well, maybe you should have done, but actually there is no point in judging oneself in such a way, because you're not going to move on from that space. But I think, you know, the whole word noticing is just this whole allowing that space to observe what's going on, rather than rushing to the next thing. Because as you say, it's, you know, we can't work from a point of, you know, illusion, because it's not real. But if we pause long enough to see what we wish to create, then actually we can make it real. But too often we're just chasing it head down, rush. I should have got there faster. But, you know, and I look at so many situations currently, and I kind of go, well, that is absolutely a symptom of somebody who is, people who are just so in the motions that they've kind of lost where they fit in the world. I guess that's probably why so many struggle when, you know, we go through major life transitions, because they suddenly realize that actually, you know, they've materially moved on, but not really noticed along the way. It's sort of, so when something big happens, they go, whoa, gosh, well, how did that happen? You know, so much has changed. I know, I think it's a really interesting one, because I like I say, I'm quite happy with space. In fact, crave at times that quietness to be able to hear myself think in a very noisy world. I don't necessarily always go, oh, I know exactly what I'm feeling, but it's just, you know, quiet enough to hear my own thoughts rather than the thoughts of everybody else, and to be able to do something with that, rather than jumping to the next thing because everyone can't make a decision, or we're going, you're either coming with us or you're not, and you're like, well, hold a minute, you know, where are we going to, and is that right for me? But we don't question that at all. We just crack on.
Yeah, and I think stress has such a massive part to play here, Laura.
Yeah.
Stress and pressure and overwhelm, because so many of us are constantly in that state now. And stress makes us stupid. You literally cannot think straight when you're stressed. You can't make good decisions. You don't make good choices. You are coming from fear. You're in a state with your nervous system that is wired to be like prey. So you feel like you're being hunted by lions and tigers. You can't think straight. Your body's full of adrenaline and cortisol. You're ready to run away or have a fight or go and hide, whatever it is. The senses are heightened. Your blood drains away from the bit of your brain that makes you human. And too many people almost constantly exist in that state. So they can't think clearly. They can't ask themselves the question of whether this is what they chose to do or want to do. They're just doing it because they have to. I should, like you said, Laura. I should, or like Mark was saying earlier, I just need, or I should just. Like, here's a good thing to notice, everybody. Notice when you tell yourself you should, have to, must, or ought to be doing something. Notice when you tell yourself, I should just, or I just need. When you hear yourself say that, stop and say, says who? For what purpose? Does that serve me? Is that a deliberate, intentional choice? Am I doing this because somebody else said I should? Because I'm following a set of rules handed to me by someone? And it's hard to do that when we're in constant stress, right? Yeah. You've got to be able to step out of that mode so you can employ your creative, thinking, rational, reasonable human mind that can hold all these concepts in one go. And you can look at them and give yourself some time and space around them. But if we're living at 100 miles an hour with our attention constantly on our thinking, and we're mostly stressed and under pressure and carrying a lot of responsibility, we're just constantly going to drift. We're never going to be able to say, right, bang my colors to the mast. This is who I am. This is what I really care about and why. Now I'm going to prioritize that in my life. Now that's what's going to get my attention. Not because I think I should, I have to, I must, I ought to, or because I just need to. Because I want to, because that's who I am, because that lights me up. Like you say, like, it makes me feel alive. Time stops. I'm deeply present there. That's always a clue, right? That's a clue to who you are when you feel lit up and nothing else matters. That's what's meaningful to you, and it's different for everybody. And when you start discovering that, get some more of it in your life. Make it non-negotiable. Carve out time to do it. Make deliberate, intentional choices. Live by design, not by default.
Yeah, I mean, you've used that phrase before, and I think it's so true. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I love the shift in your language there, Dan. And it's amazing how the language we use shapes the world we live within. And that's environment is external, but very much internal. We shift out of the shoulds and mights and coulds and all those kind of things into will, am, into very positive present language. It's amazing the difference that makes, because in that space where we're struggling, we're saying to ourselves like, oh, I need to change my job. I should get healthy. It's all these things that we are simply not doing. It's all in the future somewhere. That's all in the future somewhere. But we cannot change the things in the future. We can't do them if we put them over there somewhere. Can't even reach them. So we have to bring them into the present. What is it I'm going to do? What is it the action that I'm going to take? How am I going to vote for the person I want to be? And we struggle in that. And I had a post on it just the other day, because even I came up with talking to a client last night who's really struggling to make important decisions, really struggling because of a story they've been telling for their entire life, so you're struggling to make important decisions. And I said to them, okay, well, what would your future self want you to do today? And they were like, oh my God, I know what they want. There we go, we have our decision. Our future self wants us to take action now, because our future self wants an easy life. But the less we do for them today, the harder life we're making it for them tomorrow. And all they want is the easy life. They're going, sorry, but you need to go through the hardship now and I'll have the easy life. That's the reality. That's what they want. But what if you don't do it? We both get hardship. So nobody wins if you don't go through it. But sometimes that can be the catalyst, because we are on a timeline. and we forget we're on a timeline. You know, we have this human mind, and it's idea that we're infinite. You know, and sometimes there's a jolt that suddenly realizes, wait a second, this isn't infinite. This is going to end at any minute, and suddenly we're much more alert to what is possible. You know, what is out there. You know, and sometimes we need to think about, well, if it is all that there is, what does my future self want me to do today? What does I want my life to look like? And I think it's, who do I want to be? It'll go the whole way back to, like, we were in school, and you know, you put your hand up and you say, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor or a fireman or a nurse. And you could say that. The kids who said that, I always think, were the kids who knew how they could be of service, and they knew for them being of service would hold value. For a lot of the rest of us, we're like, I don't know, what does my dad do? You know, I don't know what I want to do. Like, we had no idea, because we didn't even have a concept of that. And therefore, we never quite figured out. And we've often said, I've met people in their 60s who say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right? No, we don't. But who do you want to be right now? Okay, and it's not about, I want to be a doctor or a fireman, or I want to be a civil engineer, whatever it is. What about, I want to be happy in myself? Maybe that's okay. I want to be living a life that I'm proud of. I want to be an example to my kids. I want to be content in the space that I find myself in. Maybe that's the aim. Instead of I want to be I just want to be. And we just stop.
Yeah. And I think you're so right. I mean, you know, you've heard, and I've said it even in this conversation, you know, I want to feel alive. That's, you know, and what makes me feel alive is a certain set of things. And so, you know, my career has never been one job, one profession, you know, even before, you know, what I've been doing in more recent times, you know, because it's in pursuit of that feeling ultimately. And I know certain things come to life when so I love when I'm having a window into somebody else's world, when I'm connecting dots, seeing patterns and things like that, you know, so I find then the work that delivers that to make me feel alive. So, you know, that's the very essence of me. I guess, you know what, listening to you speak there, Mark, and yourself too, Dan, is, you know, you talk about what is possible, and, you know, the idea that life is on a timeline, and that it is finite. But I think there is a part that goes, puts into sharp focus in that minute as to what truly matters most. And I think sometimes we can get so drawn into the wider conversations that we forget, you know, literally, where are we now? What are we noticing? And what do we want to notice? Because actually in those kind of three questions that we can ask ourselves, we can have all the answers. And it might be that, you know, we go, what are we noticing? Oh, well, it was really bad. And it, you know, can have a whole load of things that we don't feel comfortable about. But in that same breath, there is going to be a opposite end of the continuum, because the two things can't coexist. You know, you can't be really hate something and really love it at the same time. So what is the difference? You know, how can we flip that script with just acknowledging where we are right now? You know, if we sit there going, well, I hate my job. Well, exactly what is it that you hate your job about? Get to the specifics. So therefore, flip the script. Well, if I have this, this, and this, then that gives me my perfect job. We don't even have to think about, you know, what my future self is. We can do that just by simply asking ourselves, you know, where am I now? What am I noticing? What do I want to notice? And what one action can I take today that is going to take me one step further along? We might not know where the end goal is. And unfortunately, in this world of perpetual noise, uncertainty, and who knows what tomorrow's news will bring, because it's going to be different from what we thought it was going to be. But this is how we can still move forward, by literally observing the moment and noticing in that moment. I don't know. Maybe I've massively oversimplified it, but
no, I think we overcomplicate everything, Laura. I think life actually is very simple, and And what you've touched on there is mindfulness, isn't it? It's being present in the moment. It's noticing what's going on, not having our attention stuck up in our head, not being distracted, not being pushed and pulled from pillar to post. It's actually just taking time to be in the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's it. You know, for me, it's like just noticing what's going on right now. Is it that simple, Mark?
It is that simple, because for me to be in the moment means I need to go, because I have to go and meet a client right now. But so it is that simple. It is that simple. Though. That is the truth of it, like, you know, because life isn't happening outside of those moments. It's only ever happening within those moments. That's where it exists, and it's just a sequence of moment after moment after moment. That's what we are. But too busy.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, look, as ever, fabulous to have you in this conversation. And I think if I worked it out correctly, our next one is the 26th, but we might have to check on that because I know that's probably half term. So, but thank you as ever, both of you, and for everyone else for joining us, and look forward to next month.